When Steelshod gets to Arcadia, that's the capital of Cadia. I know, but it was easy and had a nice flow. Anyway, when Steelshod gets there, there's going to be another round of hiring. And I realized when writing part 4 that in the first couple sections I glossed over a few hires. So let's take a quick detour to review the members of Steelshod in a little more depth. Like I've said before, this story doesn't just belong to Alexander and Yoren. This is the story of Steelshod. I'll try to be concise and fun. Just trust that these guys keep cropping up, doing dope shit. So it's probably best to know who they are, if you can. I know it's a lot of names. Sorry. If you found A Song of Ice and Fire hard to follow, this might get rough as we go deeper into the story. But, on the plus side, I'm not posting one section every 10 years, so maybe it'll be okay. Dylan is the first of the original 3 members. He's Middish, from a small city-state called Victoria. More on Victoria some other day. Reedy guy, tall and thin, good on horseback, good with a bow. Specializes in high mobility, good positioning, flanks, etc. Level-headed, reliable, all-around good dude. Rapidly identified as Alexander and Yoren's primary lieutenant. Then comes Prudence. She's an adult, but she's tiny and has one of those faces. She can pass for quite young. Specialty is scouting urban environments. Can blend like the Assassin's Creed dude on his best day. Soft-spoken, but has a biting, snarky sensibility. Yoren claims to dislike her. The common refrain of, "Shut up, Prudence," is heard whenever she gives him shit. Real talk, he sees her as a little sister figure, wants to look out for her. Figures if he pisses her off and drives her to retirement, so much the better. Bear is the last of the original 3 members. A barbarian from the Ruskan steppes. To most Southerners, him and Alexander seem basically indistinguishable in ethnicity and accent. But in reality, their people fucking hate each other. And fight constantly. Alexander has earned Bear's respect, though. Bear is a big, gruff dude with a big, gruff axe. He actually has like 5 axes. He's like Gimli if you changed the accent and doubled the size. Then comes Robin, nicknamed Sweet Robin before he joined. Like nicknaming the huge guy Tiny. Yoren likes to call him Rotten. You can read part 2 for more on him. Best way to sum him up? One of his most unique tier abilities is called Gold Bricking. Gives combat bonuses to whoever he's hiding behind, as long as he attacks last or not at all, and doesn't get hit. Next up are 2 dudes I skipped. Orson and Levin were mercs working for the merchant Giancarlo. They signed on with Steelshod in Yerevan. Orson is a pretty basic merc, but his mom was a midwife and herb woman. Steelshod mostly hires him because he knows how to make a poultice and bind a wound. Levin is a dour, terse motherfucker. If he says a complete sentence, some serious shit is about to go down. Great scout, rider, and skirmisher. Yoren promptly nicknames him Lemon, 'cause he's sour. Then we have Anatoly, Ruskan mercenary. His company was sent to kill Alexander's girlfriend. Naturally, after the fight, Alexander recruited him. Not a bad guy. Felt weird about the job, but he's from a Ruskan region that borders the steppes. So Bear hates him. They get in a few fights before Alexander forces them to cut it out. He got horrifically injured in the Ankar Hills. On sick list in a wagon now. Orson desperately trying to keep him alive. Then there's Perrin, a merc from Fort Taram. Taram mercs are known for versatility. They train in a wide variety of weapons and styles: sword and board, pike, bow, formation, close quarters, etc. Perrin's a decent chap, upstanding, has a fling with prudence. Yoren tried to break them up at first, but eventually decided Perrin was treating her okay and eased off. Gunnar I already mentioned. Svard, but quite intelligent and not so impulsive. Still loves to fight. Hates most of the Svards invading, from a subjugated clan. Good with sword and board, and knows the water like he was born in it. Kara and Miles I went into great detail on last time, so I'll skip them for now. One other note, mechanics this time. I mentioned I roll NPC stats 3d6 in order down the line. Not true. Actually, first I often pick one or more stats that I know need to be decent based on the NPC's role in life, and roll them a custom method. Example, 10 plus 2d4 or 12 plus 1d6. Then, I roll 3d6 in order down the line for the other stats. Think of it this way. The dude with 6 strength didn't become a warrior. So if the party meets a warrior, I know he won't have 6 strength. So, I knew before rolling that Gunnar and Miles would have high strength, but I had no idea Gunnar would have 16 int, or that Kara would have 16 con, or that Miles would have garbage charisma. Anyway, Steelshod makes it to Arcadia without much further ado. They heard an army was gathering, and goddamn was that rumor true. Big fucking army. Lots of merc companies. Lots of lords. The general is Lord Winston Marshall, called the Marshal. Marshall is renowned as a great man, and a great knight. He was regent for many years, faithfully transitioned power to the king, widely considered to be the pinnacle of knightly and lordly virtue. Yes, he's loosely based on the real The Marshal. Alexander and Yoren meet him. They tell him what they know of Hakon, Terbjornsson, Svards in the Enkar Hills, and the border fiefs. They get a little cocky. They impress upon the Marshal that they are elite irregulars. Marshal isn't easily impressed. They'll get the same pay as every other merc, unless they prove they're worth more. But he'll give them a job soon, to test their mettle. They got some downtime waiting for assignment, so it's time to start recruiting. Enter Ben Longshanks, a tall, rangy fellow with an overbuilt right arm. Old Cadian saying, if you want a good longbowman, start with his grandfather. Ben's from a long line of longbowmen. Put him through his paces, impressed with his performance. Welcome aboard, Ben. Who's next? Sir Leon de Pont, Lorinet Chevalier, and his Batman Michel. Leon is young and arrogant and hot-blooded, but he knows how to ride, he knows how to fight, and he's decked out in heavy Lorinet plate. Michel is an older gentleman, sent by Leon's father to keep an eye on him. Prim and proper, probably more comfortable sipping tea with pinky extended. But he has a sling tied to his waist and a couple short blades, and he knows how to use them. Welcome aboard, Leon and Michel. This is all well and good, but Steelshod just isn't multicultural enough. I know what they need. Some spits. Alejandra and her 2 men, Carlito and Martin, are Jeanettes. Spitalian light cavalry. Skirmishers skilled with sword and javelin. Alejandra has some experience commanding small units, but these 2 are the only ones she has for now. Very friendly, very forward. Doesn't take long for everyone to realize her and her 2 lads bunk together. Carlito is a nice enough guy. Martin too, though he doesn't speak a lick of Middish. Welcome aboard, Spitz. Miles also officially joins at this point. Like I mentioned earlier, when he goes to face the music for desertion and rejoin the army, his lord has him taken into custody and dragged out to be executed, Prudence is watching from the wings and fetches Alexander. Alexander swoops in just in time. He throws a good chunk of his personal funds at the Lord, and takes Miles into his service. The last new recruit is a young man named Jaspar Beckenridge. Notable, not an NPC. See, the guy who plays Alexander loves making characters. By this point, he'd made 2 backup PCs in case Alexander kicked the bucket. Jaspar was the second backup he made, but the first to enter the game officially. The other one you'll meet in a future episode. Jaspar is a scholar, studied in Kassala at the university, Middish, an unjumped peasant, from a family of mostly sea merchants that was wiped out by Svards. He's on his own, looking for work, tries to hire himself on as a factor, money guy, administrator, that sort of thing. Alexander is skeptical, doesn't yet understand how valuable an administrative expert can be. Insists Jaspar still has to go through traditional trial of combat with an existing member of the company. Jaspar is not pleased with this. He has noodle arms and virtually no combat training, but lets one of Steelshod beat on him in a ring. Remember, Alexander and Jaspar are the same player. Can I just say how much fun it is to see my players do the talking to themselves shit that DMs do every day? 'Cause goddamn is it entertaining. Which is good, 'cause I'm gonna see a lot of it over the years. Anyway, welcome aboard, Jaspar. Alexander begins putting him and all the other new recruits through some more rigorous training. Also spends as much time as he can shadowing an army blacksmith. He seems really enamored with the trade, and begins trying his hand at it in earnest. Before too long, the marshal summons Steelshod. They have a mission. Sent to the northern reaches of Arcadia, near the border of Kriegany. There's a fort there called Northwatch. Strategically important, bulwark for lots of northern settlements, farmland, the road to Torva, etc. They suspect it may have already fallen to Svards. Their job is to scout Northwatch and the surrounding area. Marshal will send a knight with 100 or 200 men to take the fort and hold it. No problem. Steelshod rides out, leaves behind Anatoly, who is still recovering from injuries, and Jaspar. Their orders are to keep recruiting possible mercs. I just decided that a map might be helpful. I grabbed one from my files. The base map was drawn by hand, but a year or 2 ago I scanned it in and redid the text because my handwriting is roughly on par with a 2nd grader. The red line is Steelshod coming to Arcadia from Yerevan. The green line is their trip up to Northwatch. I know it looks like shit, but maybe it'll help. I'm slowly working on a prettier map using a more sophisticated program, but far from finished. Anyway, you can ignore like 99% of the named locations on there. By this point in the campaign, none of those places had names. The only ones that did were Torva, obviously, Northwatch, Arcadia, oh, and Woolsby, tiny speck just outside the Unkar Hills, where they met Miles. The first leg of the journey goes fast. Steelshod reaches Saltwick, a small castle out in marshy mudflats on the coast. The town has a ferry across the big Ironblood River. No bridge here. Remember, impressive stone bridges are Castlean shit. Cadians can manage wooden bridges, but not over a river this big, and not arched enough to allow river traffic. The first real problem hits when crossing the river. The first load of Steelshod make it over. While the ferry is loading up the second half, though, ambush. Kragars in the hills around the ferry landing. A shallow ravine, bad position for Steelshod. Steelshod's skirmishers break out on horseback to try to close. From the ferry, Ben stabs a row of arrows into the wood in front of him, hunkers down into his shooting stance, and gets to plucking. Longbow range is insane. Solid damage and penetration. Ben's class ability lets him shoot an extra time when immobile in stance. Ouchies. A minor kerfuffle when Levin disobeys an order from Yoren, breaks off from assigned target to help a comrade who looks pressed. He thought it was reasonable. Yoren, not so much. Around now is when he gets his nickname, Lemon, and starts getting all the shit work Yoren can give him. Yoren is a badass, zealous in his faith, sometimes seems like he's made of nothing more than grit, willpower, and old boot leather. Loyal to Alexander unto death. But damn can he be an obnoxious little git. The party arrives at the Northwatch region. They scout the area. Rumor confirmed. Svards and Kriegers hold the fort. Well, most of it. Northwatch was basically just a Castelline watchtower on a hill. Solid stone structure. Cadians built around it. A small township with wooden walls. The works. It appears that the town and outer walls have been taken by the enemy, but Steelshod can see Cadians on the top of the watchtower, occasionally plinking arrows down below. It looks like a siege. Yoren scouts a little closer, because he's reckless and confident like that. Best guess is no more than 40 men. Mostly Kriegers, not Svards. Kriegars in Ter Bjornsson's army are more likely to be effectively conscripts. Average quality of fighting man seems a bit lower than the Svards. Alexander and Yoren know they need to make a good impression on Marshall. They want to be able to command a more serious pay rate for their next engagement. So, fuck waiting for backup. They're gonna take the fort now. They review their options. Sneak attack? Decent chance there, but most of Steelshod ain't exactly sneaky. Frontal assault? Reckless. It'll get people killed, and Steelshod values its members. Alexander remembers a story of how Ter Bjornsson has suborned so many clans. A common strategy is to challenge a clan's jarl to single combat. Svardic and Krieger culture both put huge emphasis on personal skill at arms. Single combat is the ultimate test. So, frontal assault it is. Steelshod approaches Northwatch openly. In the lead is Alexander, Yoren, and Gunnar. Gunnar is there as a translator. The Kriegers notice Steelshod. They begin arming up, getting to the walls, etc. Cadians in the tower notice too. Alexander calls out the enemy leader to single combat. He gets a response in the form of a roar. A big roar. A really fucking big roar. The gates open. A Svardic Sark strides out. Oh shit. JPEG. They'd heard Sarks become the bearskins they wear. They didn't realize that wasn't much of an exaggeration. The Sark is like 10 feet tall. Huge fucking dude. Built like a bear. Huge bearskin hangs from his back. Front armored in mail and bits of plate. Carrying an axe big enough to make Bear jealous. That's Steelshod's bear, not Sark bear. Look, I didn't know we'd have Sarks when I named Bear, okay? You get the idea. The Sark roars again. Gunnar translates. Challenge accepted. Alexander is gonna have to face this motherfucker by himself? Yoren has a spark of inspiration. One of many he will have. They always begin with the same words. I have a terrible plan. Quickly confers with Gunnar. The Bearsarks get their power from the ritual killing of the bear. Svardic lore says they bind the bear's soul to the skin, and that soul then infuses them with rad abilities. Gunnar shouts out, Yoren's addendum to the challenge. Alexander's challenge was for single combat, but the bear Sark is fighting for two. Hardly fair, is it? If he gets his bear to tag along, Alexander should get a second as well. Yoren. Yoren is 5'0" and carries a sword and dagger that each looks skinny enough to snap in one big bear hand. Challenge still accepted. They meet on the shallow slope leading up to the gates, 'cause in addition to being 10 feet tall, the bear Sark totally needs the high ground. Good thing neither Yoren or Alexander can force jump over him, I guess. Alexander approaches head on, Yoren on the flank. Engage! Alexander hits hard, especially with his demon-possessed sword, which hasn't been acting up too badly lately, but heats up a little as he starts fighting this dude. Still, it's clear this motherfucker is tough. Like, 3d6+1 protection reducing incoming hits tough. He shrugs off Alexander's first blow and hits back like a freight train with an axe blade strapped to the front. Yoren comes in on the flank, strikes out with his slender steel sword and a steel dagger he got from Giancarlo. Even with steel, he doesn't make much impact. Just little pinpricks. Kind of expected this. Alexander has been the main damage dealer for a while. What he's not expecting is for the bear Sark to shift suddenly and body slam him in response to these attacks. Even an unarmed blow from this beast hurts. Alexander scrambles to keep the bear Sark engaged while Yoren gets his shit together. Yoren is nothing if not resourceful. He doesn't hit hard enough to make a serious dent, so why hit at all? While Alexander fights the bear Sark, Yoren sheathes his weapons, unclasps his cloak, maneuvers behind the bear Sark, and uses his cloak as an improvised net. He leaps up and hooks it around the bear Sark's face, climbing up onto the bear Sark's back like Mulan climbed that big-ass pole. Bear Sark, no like. He lashes out at Yoren with elbows, his free hand, and thrashes every which way. One hands his huge axe to keep fighting Alexander, but he's seriously distracted now. Yoren takes a pounding, but Alexander can take advantage of this. He maneuvers in close, leveraging his sword in between the hardest points of armor, and delivers a killing blow. Or not. The bear Sark roars, throws Yoren off, smashes into Alexander twice as hard. Axe, fist, foot, teeth. Alexander bears the brunt of it, struggling to get in another good hit. When the bear Sark's dying rage ends, he topples over. Yoren narrowly avoids getting squished, but the bear Sark stays down. The assembled Kriegars and Svards are speechless. Bloody, battered, the two Steelshod commanders demand that they get the fuck out or face the consequences. Gunnar shouts the translation. Steelshod's other troops move forward, ready to fight if the enemy doesn't honor the deal. But Kriegars and Svards have honor after a fashion. Cultural codes, anyway. They get the fuck out. Gunnar warns that they'll probably be back, but probably not right away, since it was clear the bear Sark was the one driving them on. Steelshod enters Northwatch, victorious. The Cadian survivors shout down thanks and greetings. They don't open the tower, though. Not out of distrust. They can't. They can see why when they assess the watchtower. It turns out that the big bear Sark was well on his way to ripping the iron fucking portcullis out of its frame. The thing is bent and mangled beyond repair. It takes a day and a half working together to get it removed. Alexander doesn't waste time on repairs, though. He fires up the Northwatch forge. The blacksmith is dead, so he gets to work rebuilding the portcullis himself. Steelshod helps the Cadian survivors repair their wrecked little fortification. Potential trouble comes a few days later, in the form of help. Seems a neighboring Middish kingdom, Dunbridge, discovered that Northwatch was taken, and came to liberate it. This sort of thing happens a lot. Most likely, they'd have claimed the land and surviving peasants for Dunwich. Alexander and Yoren meet the leader of the Dunridge troops. Dunridge straddles the border of Midlands, Kriegany, and Rusk. So, let's see how well I can pull off a Polish accent. Yeah, not so much. Steelshod have repaired enough of the fort that it's not obviously vulnerable, and the pretense for taking it is a lot thinner. So the Dunites head home, mildly disappointed. A few more days passed. Cadian reinforcements arrive. 150 men, led by an arrogant young lordling named Davrian Cox. He rides in and demands to see Steelshod's commander. He's pointed towards the smithy. He arrives to find a hairy, shirtless Ruskin hammering away on portcullis beams. Irritated at being sent the wrong way, he demands the blacksmith take him to the commander of Steelshod right now. Alexander grins and introduces himself. At least Cox has the decency to be a little embarrassed. Alexander gives him the full report on what he's missed. The surviving Northwatch folk confirm. Cox is young, and was honestly kind of looking forward to the glory of retaking the keep. But there's no denying Steelshod got the job done. They get a grudging thanks. But, as they say, the thanks for a job well done is another job. Cox tells them to scout the border between Kriegany and Northwatch, in case there are still Kriegers massing. I had seeded some rumors of a monster in the depths of the woods north of Northwatch. I was kinda looking forward to that. But the thing about Alexander and Yoren, and their players, is that they're smart. They have a job. The job doesn't include fighting weird monsters. They skirt the edge of the woods. They plan only to venture deep if they find signs of Kriegars entering. Kriegars aren't as dumb as I hoped the party would be. So the scouting is mostly a bust. A small fight when scouting the western coast, nothing serious. They report back that things seem clear. Cox thanks them for their help. Says his scouts reported some strange troop movements near Torva. They could avoid that, but this is Steelshod. Alexander and Yoren decide to investigate. It's on the way after all, albeit a slightly more circuitous route. So, they head south to Torva. The siege of Torva is a doozy, but I think I'll save that for next time. Thank you for tuning in to Steelshod, a series by Mostly Rights, narrated by Tailforge. You can find every chapter in text format, as well as character sheets, setting information, maps, and rule documents on the Steelshod tabletop system in the link below. If you'd like to support the channel, you can pop down to the description and use the Patreon link for recurring donations, the PayPal.me link for one-time donations, the Teespring link for shirts with the incredibly cool background art by Nobody, or use the DriveThruRPG affiliate link the next time you're looking to try a new system. If you'd like to support the author, you can find Steelshod merch on the MostlyRights.com store, or donate to the Mostly Rights Patreon, which are both linked on reddit.com/r/mostlyrights down below.